What are some examples of common provisions found in California bills? You should be familiar with some of these if you've read through California bills, but here are some common provisions. Contingent enactment language. An example is this act shall become operative only if Assembly Bill 1279 of the 2021-22 regular session is enacted and becomes operative on or before January 1, 2023. The naming of an act. An example is this act shall be known and may be cited as the Clean Energy, Jobs, and Affordability Act of 2022. An example of legislative findings for a bill of statewide concern. The legislature finds and declares that Section 2 of this act addresses a matter of statewide concern rather than a municipal affair, as that term is used in Section 5 of Article 11 of the California Constitution. Therefore, Section 2 of this act applies to all cities, including charter cities. Another is a reimbursable mandate disclaimer. An example would be no reimbursement is required by this act pursuant to Section 6 of Article 13B of the California Constitution for certain costs that may be incurred by a local agency or school district, because in that regard, this act creates a new crime or infraction, eliminates a crime or infraction, or changes the penalty for a crime or infraction within the meaning of Section 17556 of the Government Code. There are also legislative findings and declarations. An example of this may be the legislature finds and declares all of the following. In addition to increasing impacts of climate change, a growing body of research shows direct health impacts from proximity to oil extraction. These impacts are disproportionately impacting Black, Indigenous, and people of color in California, who are most likely to live in close proximity to oil extraction activities and who are the most vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change. The next is a definition or a defined term. An example of that might be, for purposes of this article, the following definition applies. Area means surface area, and all measurement of distances is on the surface of the land. A severability clause. An example of that may be the provisions of this act are severable. If any provision of this act or its application is held invalid, that invalidity shall not affect other provisions or applications that can be given effect without the invalid provision or application. Next is an urgency clause. An example of the language used in an urgency clause. This act is an urgency statute necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety within the meaning of Article 4 of the California Constitution and shall go into immediate effect. The facts constituting the necessity are an example of double jointing language that is used to address the problem of chaptering out. An example of double jointing could be Section 1.5 of this bill incorporates amendments to Section 26200 of the Business and Professions Code proposed by both this bill and Assembly Bill 2210. That section of this bill shall only become operative if one, both bills are enacted and become effective on or before January 1, 2023. Two, each bill amends Section 26200 of the Business and Professions Code. And three, this bill is enacted after Assembly Bill 2210, in which case Section 1 of this bill shall not become operative. Sometimes we have public purpose findings that there's no gift of a public fund. An example of this could be the legislature finds and declares that Section 17138.6 of the Revenue and Taxation Code as added by this act is necessary for the public purpose of preventing undue hardship to taxpayers who reside or used to reside in a part of California devastated by wildfires, and does not constitute a gift of public funds within the meaning of Section 6 of Article 16 of the California Constitution. And then sometimes we have special statutes, and you might find an example of this, like the legislature finds and declares that a special statute is necessary, and that a general statute cannot be made applicable within the meaning of Section 16 of Article 4 of the California Constitution because of the unique circumstances of the economy of the county of Inyo that apply only to the county of Inyo. So again, these are just some samples of some common provisions that we often find in California legislation.